The time for the ultimate campaign is now. All factions march to war. Uncountable banners dance against the skies, and the earth itself trembles in anticipation of the battles to come. Prophets from around the world reveal outcomes of ruin. The visions of the future paint a terrible fate for the world. Legendary lords will fall, but many others will rise in their wake. In this episode, we will explore the history and motivations of all the races that are now involved in a conflict without precedent. The Immortal Empires Campaign takes place over the entire Warhammer world. Countless civilizations will fall, and the skies will burn. The stake has never been higher, as the fate of the world itself and the future of each faction are to be decided on the battlefield. Which faction will you take to war? For thousands of years has the race of man been involved in a constant fight for its own right to survive. The brave men and women of the Empire have faced horrors untold, enemies coming from everywhere, and tribulations that have taken them to their limits. Yet humanity have always stood firm against the ever-growing raging fire that seeks to consume it.
We unite!
Now it seems that they are cornered once again, facing enemies from all sides, with the number of armies marching against them higher than ever before. It seems like extinction has come. The heart of every citizen of the Empire burns with an inner fire, a flame that slowly burns with a creeping fear that the end has come once and for all. But there's also the burning fire of faith, a burning flame that keeps hope for humanity alive, a light against the darkness. And there's certainly hope for the Empire, as the most recently elected Emperor shows great promise. Karl Franz, Elector Count of Reichland, Emperor of Man, rightful owner of Galmaraz and Prince of Altdorf, takes up the throne and now commands the vast armies of humankind at the front lines. But he is not alone, for aiding him is none other than Balthazar Gelt, the supreme patriarch of the Colleges of Magic and mighty wizard. The Empire is indeed surrounded by enemies on all sides, but also opportunities for trade and friendship. The Dwarfs of the Karazhan and the fellow humans of Bretonnia being the main examples. To survive, they must not only maintain, but also truly unite the Empire as one, be it through diplomacy, political strife, or through sheer violence if need be. Only in total union and common purpose will the race of man have a chance against such overwhelming odds. The armies of the Empire are a sight to behold. Rows and rows of pikes make up the bulk of a basic Imperial army, with a solid core of crossbowmen and flanks of heavy cavalry, including Demigryph Knights, Knights of the Blazing Sun, Knights of More, and many more. They are all trained to answer any combat demands, and they are ready to face the horrors of war. Deadly artillery often supports any sizable force. Cannons roar against heavy targets, the cannonballs able to break armored enemies and even city gates. The Hellstorm rocket batteries unleash havoc on the hordes of enemy infantry, while the imposing steam tank roll over anything lighter than themselves. Will the empire of man endure against such darkness that is consuming the world? Or will humanity face its total annihilation at the hands of the many enemies that now assail them?
Cowards, hiding in the deepest, darkest places. Fools. Every wrong is recorded. Every slight against us. Page after page, etched in blood.
When men hid in caves, embracing life-saving fire and battling with wood and rock, the proud dwarfs built kingdoms within the mountains. From the depths of the world, they took everything they ever wanted, and like rivers did gold, silver, gems, and star metal flow. Their armor was impenetrable, and their weapons could sunder the heavens, and even the unending hordes of Greenkins could do them no harm. Against the mighty Elves did they fight in a war of apocalyptic scale, and when the conflict was over, disaster struck. The mountains themselves shook, volcanoes came to life, as if the world was revolted for being exploited relentlessly by mortal hands. And then they came. Floods of Greenkins and Skaven that took over dwarf hold after dwarf hold when they were most vulnerable. And now, their kingdom as they built it is no more. The golden age of the dwarfs is over. It has been that way for a long time now, and their glory days only a memory sung in sagas and told in legends. But through grit and determination, they soldier on to this day, surviving, for it is what they know best. Mankind has taken the place of the elves and dwarfs of old as rulers and inhabitants of the old world. In the mighty hold of Karazakarak, thunder can be heard, but it comes not from the heavens. It comes from underground, as the dwarfs march to war once again to reclaim their glory. And at the head of the throng is King Thorgrim Grudgebearer.
The Orcs must pay. Let them come.
A legendary hero of countless battles and High King of the Dwarfs, wielder of the axe of legendary Grimnir, protected by the ancestor gods themselves. The High King has the duty to reclaim what is rightfully his and of his kin. The great book of grudges is full, and ancient grudges that have waited too long are bound to be settled. The Slayers flock to march to meet their destiny, and leading them is the Slayer King of Karak Kadrin, Ungrim Ironfist, wielding a great axe and cloaked in the hide of a mighty draconic beast. On short legs they march, and with them comes vengeance made manifest. Proud by nature, most dwarf formations use a simple but effective axe and shield, or two-handed axe, for indeed they are old-fashioned. But not only a dwarf and his axe make for a fearsome warrior and a valuable addition to any army, they are often accompanied by a throng of the greatest and most effective artillery in the world to support them. They are slow, and as such, their battle tactics are quite defensive. Lines of quarrelers, wielding the trustworthy crossbow, pepper the enemies with bolts, and thunderers unleash their deadly fire upon anything without a beard. With the exception of the rangers, who are equipped for scouting, and the slayers, who are destined to seek a glorious death on the battlefield, All dwarfs carry very heavy armor when compared to other armies, and even the lowliest of warriors is clad in thick metal. Dwarfs spit at magic and consider it foul play, so they use runes, an interesting and quite effective workaround. Accompanying the runes comes a great assortment of field engineers who help the war machines work around the clock, delivering death and vengeance with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine. For centuries they have stood like rocks against their enemies, and they plan to do so once again, as their kingdom is set to collapse once and for all. The stubbornness of the dwarfs is to be truly tested with the coming tribulations.
This fell deed has been entered into the Damaskran, and the cover slammed shut in rage. By my oath, it shall not be opened until the grudge is settled, until the bones are smashed to powder.
When the fury of the Greenkins descends upon the land, it leaves nothing behind, save for total destruction and ruin. Any standing structures are burned and broken up for raw materials. Crops are trampled, livestock eaten, and rivers churned to mud. The size and destructive nature of a greenskin horde means that it needs to keep moving in order to survive. Otherwise, it would soon exhaust the local supplies of food and water, and then, inevitably, turn upon itself. For this reason, a powerful and capable war boss must always lead the tribes from battle to keep the momentum going, traveling wherever there's fighting to be had, and fresh lands to raid, and no place, no matter how hidden or well protected it may be, is ever safe from the reach of the Greenkins. In the order of greenskin life, the strong rule over the weak. All of them are drawn to fight alongside a powerful war boss who can lead their tribes from victory to victory. Capable of leading entire tribes from battle to battle are the Black Orcs. They are the largest, strongest, and most ferocious of all the Greenkins. They are elite warriors of a brutal race of creatures who live to fight, and amongst their number, there is no meaner and tougher war boss than Grimgor Ironhide. From the day Grimgor was first seen, he hadn't stopped fighting and conquering. No rival war boss can stand before his might, and few dare to fall under the gaze of his one good eye. As the world burns in the flames of conflict, the Greenkins are more eager than ever to find a good scrap. There are signs that Grimgor is mustering the biggest war the world has ever seen. Skarsnik, who has long been fighting in one of the bloodiest conflicts known in the Warhammer world, the War of Karak 8 Peaks, is now marching his war into a path of war and destruction above and beyond the ground and the mountains. Grom the Paunch, the largest and most powerful goblin warlord to ever live, is also mustering a mighty army of goblins and other nasty creatures. Too many and too varied to count. The hulking goblin warlord is considered to be the only greenskin to have ever made a successful greenskin invasion against the distant lands of Ulthuan, and is now looking for the world to plunder and crush under his whip. Fear grows through all lands, as thousands of mighty war bosses from across the world are seeking more foes where the battles are the bloodiest. Who will lead the most successful war to roam the earth? One thing is for sure though, the orcs and goblins are sure to find what they are looking for in this heated campaign of Immortal Empires. Dreadfully they march, and fearful is their form, for there is no other way of being for the undead. In the cursed lands of Sylvania dwells an evil without equal. Those who seek to annihilate the living and supplant them with an empire of undead creatures under their command. These are vampires and necromancers, life forms that should not exist at all. Patient, cunning, devious. The vampires work to conquer the land of the living with ancient and corrupted sorcery, bringing the dead to life again, but bound to their will.
I am here, mortal, and I bring your end. For Avalheim will soon fall, and the rest of your pathetic cities will follow.
Sylvania itself is a province of the Empire, at least officially. To the east of Stirland and south of Ostermark, sandwiched between the two and the world's edge mountains, the kingdom of the Dwarfs, who are fundamentally opposed to the art of necromancy. It is a grim and grey place, a haunted province that seems to be forgotten by the gods. There is a vampire who stands above all others in might, significance, and in megalomaniacal splendor. Vlad von Carstein, he who waged war on the greatest empire of the old world, and very nearly took the throne, the hammer, and the crown, and truthfully brought it to its knees before a thief, the lowliest of professions, stole the ring that granted him immortality, and vanished with it, never to be seen again. Vlad was defeated so long ago, but now, in the reign of Emperor Karl Franz, he is back. He has lost no desire for dominance. Alongside his beloved Isabella von Carstein, he once more raises the undead and marches to retake what he feels is his by right of conquest. For the strong take and the weak serve, be it dead or alive. In the field of battle they feel no fear, but instead they bestow it upon others. Indeed, although there are many a deadly form of unlife in the armies of the vampire counts, their main weapon is dread itself, as naught but the strongest of hearts will stand in front of a line of their loved ones stolen from sweet death, or a phalanx of mighty warriors from the time that Sigmar walked the earth, or monsters untold, man-eaters of all forms. The counts make use of the artful craft known as necromancy. This all comes together as a cacophony that brings shivers to the spines of all, and breaks stone upon a tidal wave of corpses bile. Those that fall to the undead armies soon rise again, where once stood defiant enemy soldiers fighting against the undead hordes. Now stand the twitching corpse puppets of a morbid fiend, all reanimated by the dark arts of necromancy. The dead do not rest easy. They are now marching to take over the world.
Wave corpses will make a fine addition to my army.
when death alone is certain, how can the living possibly hope to prevail? The children of chaos, or else known as the Beastmen, are present in almost all places of the world, hiding under the shadows and always stalking their prey. They are ready to go to war. United under a massive bray herd, they run with deep hatred, seeking only to bring ruin and an age of slaughter. When the thunderous and incomprehensible energies of the raw powers of chaos were unbounded by the breaking of the polar gates, doom fell upon the world. In the darkness and the instability that brought the unleashed chaos energies, the primitive humans of the world and the beasts of the forests blended in unnatural ways. Into the eerie woods, a warped progeny was born, the Beastmen, howling as wild beasts, but with the intelligence of a primitive man. The twisted existence of the Beastmen is distant from any life form created by the natural flow of things. The most common breeds carry a goat or a bull head above their abominable bodies. The horns grow from a hard brow. The muscled cattle legs carry a man-like upper body as their cloven hooves trample the ground. The strongest and most brutal of beasts within the herd moves to be the apex predator, the chieftain or wargore of the pack. They care not how their underlings are fed or how disputes are settled. The only thing a wargore concerns himself with is with battle. Many legendary characters have been known to lead entire bray herds into battle, including Khazrak, the One-Eye, Malagor, the Dark Omen, Morgur, the Shadowgave, or Torox, the Brass Bull. Just as the chieftain seeks the leader of the enemy army to slay, the Bray shamans know no greater pleasure than hunting and butchering the priests of man in the field of battle, and then laying waste to their altars. With malign intent, they lead innumerable tribes of mutated creatures. Thousands of warherds exist across the entire world, many hidden deep in dark forests, while some others live in caves, mountains, or other hidden places. As the world is shaken to its core by the upcoming conflict of immortal empires, entire warherds are mobilizing to war, plundering and consuming all in their path. The Beastmen are amongst the most savage of all races in the Warhammer world, and they surely are a unique faction that seeks only to kill and destroy, to show mankind that they are the true predators at the top of the food chain. Bellowing, braying, and screaming, the Cloven Ones sound their brash horns as they quickly cover ground. The beast horde has opened its jaws, ready to consume all civilizations, and is now roaming far and wide. For thousands of years, the Wood Elves have lived in harmony with the sentient forest of Athelloren. They crave nothing so much as to be left alone, to tend of the forest in peace. The Wood Elves care little for the outside world. But when the fate of the nearby lands threatens Athelloren, they stride to war alongside the full might of the forest. The Wood Elves are the masters of the bow, and it is said that an elven marksman can hit the eye of a goblin in the dark. They are slender and swift, with minds and bodies that are capable of great dexterity, constantly honing their skills in an environment that challenges them every day of their lives. The Wood Elves are also supported by mighty tree men, colossal living trees that smash through the enemy lines with their gnarled fists, pulverizing all in their path. They are implacable, fearing neither pain nor death, for their bodies no longer have the ability to feel sensation. Ariel, the queen of the forest and one of the most powerful wizards in the world, is the avatar of Isha, the ancient elven goddess of nature. And when the realm of the Wood Elves is threatened, Orion is the first to fight in its defense. The demigod Orion is the king of Athaloran. He dies in flame each year and is reborn anew each spring.
But we are ready.
Upon finding and settling upon the magical forest, many elves learned the art of tree singing and learned to speak with the life essence of the trees, whispering and listening to the spirits of that sacred place. It was then that the elves, always respectful of all things natural, truly embraced Athaloran as their home. Unlike most other races, the Wood Elves have never sought to become rulers of the world. Instead, they wish only to see their homeland persist through the ages. This is the main cause for which they have to fight, for no land endures long if it cannot take up arms against those who wish to harm it. As much as the Wood Elves have no interest in the affairs of other nations and races, they are aware that the fate of Athaloran and their survival as a race is tied to that of other lands. As the Wood Elves seek to survive the darkest season of Athaloran, they guard the forest realm against invaders who seek to destroy their woodland home.
The wild hunt begins!
Ah, Bretonnia, land of knights, chivalry, feudalism, trebuchets and the Lady of the Lake. A powerful and fertile land, whose peasants work tirelessly, both in the farms and in the battlefields. When the mighty Sigmar Heldenhammer came to create his empire, he asked the Bretonni, founding tribe of these lands, to join him, but they refused to be part of the new Empire of Man. Indeed, this powerful bastion of humanity has clashed with the Empire on more than one bloody occasion, as well as with the Wood Elves of Athaloran, who technically reside in righteous Bretonian land. The current Royak of Bretonnia, Luan Leoncoeur, named Lionheart by the Lady of the Lake herself, commands respect from all dukes under his command. He is the Duke of Couronne, one of the mighty Grail Knights, and the penultimate warrior king of Bretonnia. Although minor border skirmishes between dukedoms and imperial provinces are inevitable, Luen is a friend of the Empire, and indeed a friend of Emperor Karl Franz himself. By his side stands the Fey Enchantress, a powerful vessel to the Lady of the Lake, and Alberic de Bordelot, a mighty duke and worshipper of Manan, god of the sea, and together they seek to banish the forces of chaos from their lands. The Bretonni are courageous beyond doubt, and even the humble peasant turned man-at-arms, pulled away from home and hearth by war, spills his blood gladly for the lady and the land, with polearm and bow in hand. The solid core of a Bretonnian army is, however, its cavalry, for they are renowned across the old world and beyond as having the best knights around. From the lowly knights errant to the vigorous Grail guardians, they are all death delivered on horseback. But that is not all, for the most accomplished amongst them take as their mounts an elegant and rare creature, the Pegasus, and with them they ride amongst the very winds. These brave warriors protect humanity against the growing evils of chaos and the constant menace presented by the orcs, goblins, Skaven, and other monstrous creatures that threatens mankind's survival. In the direst of hours, the Knights of Bretonnia ride like an avalanche against the foe. They carry their honor and their strength, and no enemy shall stand before them.
We seek the monsters that you fear the most.
Far to the north of the old world, in the blighted region known as the Chaos Wastes, dark energy bleeds from a gaping wound in the fabric of reality. Raging gales of energies howling down from the ancient ruins of the fallen Polar Gate, resting at the very heart of the northern Chaos Wastes, make their way into the world. Norsca is amongst the regions most affected by it, mainly because of its proximity to the Chaos Wastes. As such, no sane human being would be able to survive in this harsh wasteland with their sanity intact. It is for this reason that most, if not all, the tribes of Norsca are affected to some extent by the power of chaos, causing their flesh to warp and mutate through the influences of their gods, and their minds to be plunged into the darkest depths of the most violent insanity. The Northmen are barbarous and savage, worshipping outlandish gods and living lives that are altogether harsh and primitive. They have no time for plough or sickle, for their tools are the axe, the sword, and the shield. What their own lands cannot provide, they simply take from the lands of lesser men by brute force. Norsca and the Northlands is a grim and shadowy land, where the weak do not live long, and living means a constant fight for survival, supremacy, and the chance to appease the gods. War among tribes is common in this giant, icy graveyard. To the Northmen, there is no greater honor than to fight and perish in the armies of chaos under the gaze of the gods. To become a mighty warrior, offering up the deaths of those they slay on the battlefield with each passing day. Though the vast majority die in the attempt, there will occasionally emerge a warrior strong and driven enough to be chosen by the gods as one of their champions. When chaos is ascendant, the men of the North are more willing to put aside their rivalries and disputes. As word spreads of a coming conflict, the tribes gather together in a great marauding horde under the command of a fell champion of chaos, who they will follow to the corners of the world in the name of conquest. Now, more than ever, they march forth, and the dreaded war horns of the North can be heard all across the world. High above the other races of the world, the High Elves are the most noble of all the creations of the Old Ones. They are one of the most powerful and ancient civilizations of the entire world. Nimble in combat, pristine when it comes to diplomacy, and wielders of powerful magic, they dominate their enchanted home continent of Ulthuan and have influences far beyond and across the world. In the climax of the first invasion of Chaos, the Elves were the ones that created the Great Vortex, and with it, they casted the excess energies of chaos out of the world, effectively saving it. A long time ago, the race of the Elves was united as one, and there were no dark, high, or wood elf, but only a single kingdom. Eventually, a bloody civil war raged amongst them by the betrayal of Malekith, and the race of the Elves was forever divided. They waged a war of epic proportions with the Dwarfs, in the conflict known as the War of the Beard. Thousands upon thousands of lives were lost for both factions, and the bloodshed was terrible. In the end, the Elves were driven off the old world, and the Dwarfs went back to the mountains after the earth shook to its core. Tyrion and Teclis, brothers in blood and in arms, sail forth to expand the interests of Ulthuan and ready their defences in the continent. While Teclis is an extremely renowned mage, Tyrion is, perhaps, the best sword fighter alive. Their might is rivaled by none, and together they fight for the fate of the race of the High Elves. The armies of the High Elves are a mighty sight to behold in the field of battle, for they are some of the finest craftsmen in the world and masterful warriors. Extremely versatile, they have a solid line holding infantry, spear and archer hybrid, pristine marksmen, rivaled only by their brothers of Athaloran, and devastating cavalry, their breeds of horses being so good it makes Bretonian nobles blush with shame. And, of course, they are able to bond with and ride mighty dragons onto the direst of conflicts. Elven mages are quite deadly and versatile casters, not to mention their sheer centuries of experience with the ever-shifting winds of magic. With their magical attunement comes great beings known as phoenixes, who commit great deeds of elemental slaughter in the name of their mage masters. A well-organized army of High Elves acts as a symphony of destruction against any foe that dares to threaten the safety of Ulthuan or the Elves. Even outside of the field of battle and on the negotiating table, they are something to be feared and admired for, as the schemes that go on inside High Elven courts are worthy of the greatest of poems. Isolated in their dark and cold continent of Nagaroth, the murderous prowess and cruel wickedness of the Dark Elves knows no equals and bounds. They watch the rest of the world with alert and opportunistic eyes, ever looking for a chance to have vengeance and reclaim what is theirs. When they draw their swords, one thing is bound to happen. Blood will flow, either from their enemies or from their slaves. They rule the cold seas with their mighty black arcs as they bring terror to every shore of the world, no matter how distant. It happened that long ago, Malekith tried to take Ulthuan and the title of Phoenix King for himself. But the flames of Azurian rejected him in the ritual, consuming him in pain. He was taken away by his followers to be saved, as Malekith was heavily burned and wounded. he was healed by his mother, the great sorceress Morathi, whose beauty is unparalleled. After he recovered, his appearance seemed to reflect his dark and foul soul. Now, many years later, they alone bear rule of the mighty Dark Elves, and seek dominion over everyone and everything, especially their hated cousins of Ulthuan. And they march onwards to war, to reclaim what is rightfully theirs. When the Dark Elves march, the world trembles, for it comes as an army of dread that revels in the boundless joys of battle. A Dark Elf army is something to behold and fear, for their infantry is versatile and fast, and their monsters, fueled by cruelty and malice, know no bound to their savagery. Their repeater crossbows are deadly, and rain black bolts against their victims from afar, no matter how well armored. The unfortunate survivors that get captured after every battle or raid are taken away in chains to the far lands of Nagaroth to work as slaves and never to be seen again. Their martial prowess is mighty, and their warriors are among the best fighters in the world, for every Dark Elf is highly trained and experienced. When they get their blood flowing after prolonged battles, their skill gets even better, as they tend to enjoy the art of fighting and get into a state of flow with it. Hydras and other beasts are whipped into battle, and even mighty dragons are not free from being abused into fighting for their cruel masters. Their vast dominion over the seas is imposed by the use of cruel corsairs and black arcs, entire strongholds fighting with the power of dark magic, who are able to fire deep within the sea into land battles, reinforce armies on the go, and even carry uncountable slaves to do the dirty work of the powerful and wicked Dark Elves. The Dark Elves now see the state of the world as the perfect opportunity to strike and reclaim their land and have vengeance in the process. Will the Dark Elves achieve what they have been plotting for hundreds of years? Or will they need to form unlikely alliances to fight even greater enemies? From the massive jungle continent of Lastria, the Lizardmen guard their sacred temples, and they are on a permanent quest of finding and interpreting the long-lost plaques of their race. Clues that point to the world order set many ages ago by the Old Ones, the creators of it all. When the Polar Gate collapsed and the demons crossed over the bridge into the mortal plane, the Slann promptly united their psychic might to seal off the portals in an attempt to hold back the coming of chaos. Alas, half of them were crushed by the shattering, mind-breaking force during their colossal effort. The survivors of the initial assault turned to their creators for guidance, only to find them vanished from the planet. The Old Ones had departed, leaving their creations behind and the world to its fate. Through the ages, as the most ancient of races, They have stood defiant against the encroaching darkness that seems to come for them and the entire world alike. Theirs is the sacred duty of protecting and securing the world against the primordial enemy and to cleanse the taint of chaos from all the lands. The cold-blooded reptilians do not fight for power, territory, or any other petty cause. As the ultimate enemies of the Dark Gods and the forces of chaos, the Lizardmen act as a single-minded force of destruction that will stop at nothing to halt the presence of the ruinous powers or any other foe that interferes with the fulfilling of the great plan. Now that the final battle for the world is upon them, they unite as a truly destructive force to be reckoned with. After all, a large portion of the population of their race was spawned for the sole purpose of warfare and violent combat, to protect the world from destruction and erase any threat to the creation. The forces of the Lizardmen are formed by diverse species that excel in different abilities. They bear no emotion and are fueled by primal instincts. These cold-blooded killers are by design disciplined and focused creatures that act perfectly as a united force. The Lizardmen are the true inheritors of the planet. Their sacred duty is to fulfill the great plans of the mysterious beings known as the Old Ones, and to eradicate all who get in their way. Since they were created, they have been at the forefront of the battle for the world's survival. The Skaven are a malevolent race of rat men that lurk in the shadows and the deepest of tunnels. They watch, wait, and scheme, biding their time until the moment comes when they will rise up from the bowels of the world and claim the entirety of the surface for themselves. There is no land unspoiled by this foul race, with the sole exception of the enchanted continent of Ulthuan, the inhabitants of which go to extreme measures to maintain the incantation required to avoid such infestation. It is said that their vast empire stretches for untold miles beneath the earth. Their society is divided into several great clans, each ruled by a powerful Skaven collectively known as the Lords of Decay. Most of the time they are said to fight amongst themselves, like the rabid rats they are, but sometimes they set their bickerings aside and wage against other inhabitants of the world. When the rat host goes to battle, they muster the innumerable hordes of the warlord clans and their machines and beasts of battle. Each of the greater clans has its own armaments and foul methods to wage war. The clan known as Molder are powerful beastmasters and use magical warpstone to breed and mutate ferocious fighting beasts. Clan Eshin are feared assassins and stealthy murderers. It is said that no one can escape their reach. Clan Scryer are known as warlock engineers, masters of an insane blend of magic and science. Clan Pestilens are also known as the Plague Monks. They are disciples of disease and initiates of infection. As instructed by their god, the Plague Monks are dedicated to spreading pestilence and plague amongst the cities of men. There are many warlords amongst the Skaven, cowards all of them, but perhaps there is one who betrays that notion. Queek Headtaker, amongst the beings cited in the Great Book of Grudges, there are few who rival this warlord of Clan Moors, and he fights with vermin blood over the lordship of Karak Eight Peaks. But his ambition knows no limits, and his armies deface the earth. Notable, too, is a leader of Clan Pestilence armies, Lord Skrulk, a blighted being who harms the universe with his mere existence, and his presence defiles the souls of men and beyond. But they are too, perhaps, some of the best inventors amongst all of the races, and their weaponry uses warpstone as fuel and ammo, having devastating effects, rending armor and flesh alike. Monsters are kin to the vermin, and they march together at the tip of a barbed whip and worse. Who is the one to tell where the Skaven will surface next? Can a hero rise and contain these foul beings? Or will they drown the world in an unstoppable vermin tide? There was once a time when the ancient kingdom of Nehekara stood as the crown of the human civilization of the world. A golden age when its cities shone with majestic splendor, its armies conquered entire nations, and its kings ruled as living gods among men. But this great realm was razed millennia ago through treachery and sorcery. The living perished in an instant, and the dead rose from their tombs. This is the land of the dead, where mummified kings are cursed to rule in a living death. They feel no fear, they have no mercy, and over the sands of time and death they rule. Kings of empires thousands of years old rise again to make true the wishes of nigh-forgotten gods. Indeed, among the Tomb Kings stand individuals so powerful, so influential in their conquests, that they can be rivaled only by beings such as Sigmar Heldenhammer or Anarion the Phoenix King, and they stand on the annals of time as gods amongst mortals.
Our true king will show them. We do not serve. We rule.
There is no doubt who amongst the undead is the King of Kings. When he raises his hand, it is to command the incredibly vast armies of the Tomb Kings, and even mountains crumble beneath his will of iron. Setra the Imperishable, Great Unifier, Opener of the Way, the undisputed Master of all horizons, Mighty Emperor of the Sands, God Tamer, and owner of 1,000 more titles. When the King of Kings goes to war, the world quakes in fear. Long ago he expanded an empire as far as the sun touched, and he was the greatest king of men. But that time has long ago passed, and now he is back to reclaim it all. In battle, their warriors march with unrelenting will in the face of everything, ready to take what is rightfully theirs. It is known that the true and outstanding element of any Tomb King army is their constructs. Warriors who long ago were honored to be buried in giant ritualistic statues, who then came to life with their souls. Sphinxes, Ushapti, Tomb Scorpions, and the dreaded Aero Titans crush their enemies as they advance in the field of battle, conquering all in the name of their masters. Rising from their sarcophagi, the mummified tomb kings possessed the same thirst for conquest that drove them in life, and their innumerable servants are fully devoted to their kings. They now fight to restore their vast empires to its former majesty, striking forth from the desert to reclaim the world of the living. Located in the eastern shore of the continent of Lustria and facing the great ocean, the Vampire Coast has become a place of constant war between the Lizardmen and the undead. The pirate king known as Luther Harken has made the coast his domain. The pirate terrorizes the seas in search of new servants to put under his command. His mind is an insane mix of personalities, all blending into each without warning, and sparking the bold and unpredictable actions of the Pirate King for which he is known for. Under his command, the undead hordes continue to swell their ranks with every passing day, and their quest for power continues. Luther Harken faces opposition from the Lizardmen and other races that inhabit Lustria and the high seas, but armed with a mighty and numerous army, the Pirate King and his followers continue to terrorize the Vampire Coast and the Great Ocean. With every battle won and every temple ravaged, Luther Harken grows his roots deeper in the realm of the Lizardmen, expanding their withering blight through the Vampire Coast and beyond. With time, the Lizardmen have pushed back, only to be attacked again by the undead hordes in a war without a visible end. But as the world comes to a conflict of scales never before seen, the forces of the Vampire Coast will have to fight to defend their hard-won territory, and will even have to make unlikely alliances if they are to survive and play a part in the upcoming tribulations. When facing the enemy, the undead hurl themselves into battle like mindless hordes, trying to overrun their foe. However, the mariners' love for their guns carries into their afterlife. The deck gunners are known to use a wide variety of corroded weapons with questionable accuracy. But the sheer power of these long-ranged firearms have killed many overconfident foes. The Depth Guard is an elite infantry of the Vampire Coast. Blood Knight warriors, one and all. They are hand-picked by their masters and given the blood kiss, rather than being simply raised from the dead like zombies. Clad in eldritch armor, they are an unstoppable force on the field of battle, unrelenting in their advance. The high seas, the lands of Lustria and beyond are all for the taking of the Pirate King and the endless hordes of undead.
I am violence. I am war. I am wrath. I am rage incarnate.
Mankind does not recognize its doom. Not yet. They only hear the drums in the north and know that the end is here. Some will fight. Others will abandon reason, seeking salvation in scripture or the scourge. They are deceived. The Dark Brothers are stronger than ever before, and the gods fade. Only in death will any respite be found.
It is foreseen. Change was inevitable.
Many times have the dark gods breached the barrier between the mortal realms and the immaterial. Each time the death toll is greater and the consequences more dire. Now the dark gods have breached the barrier of reality again, and their might is truly terrible.
A pestilent parade!
Chaos flows raw into the world like a giant flood. The living beings that have been lost to the dark powers of chaos are now uncountable, and the great bastions and cities of the world die from within. Blood and fire rains from the sky, announcing that the world has come to an end.
Move aside, and I may grant you a gift rarely bequeathed on my other playthings. A quick and only mildly painful death.
The dark gods are now here to harvest it all, and make the world their own hellish battleground, for their appetites are vast, and their power almighty. Vast storms of magic form randomly into the material world, all-consuming vortexes that devour everything in their path, and birth from the warp abominable creatures that should not exist at all. The legendary lords of chaos, terrible manifestations of the dark chaos gods, now walk this world, and they will not stop until everything is ash, until everything is consumed, and they have brought with them a declaration of death to us all. A terrible force has gathered in the north, in numbers beyond measuring, a gathering of darkness like never before. These are the armies of chaos, and they now march against us. A special thanks to all the recent Patreons and the YouTube channel members that have joined us over the last few weeks. Your support enables the channel to keep making videos like these. If you want to join us, you can do so by checking out the link in the description below. We thank you for watching. Far north of the Empire, in a place where constant blizzards and icy winds blow relentlessly, lies the great bastion of humanity that stands like a rock against the ever-growing tide of chaos. Against the stubborn Kislevites, the forces of chaos have clashed again and again in conflicts that have stained the lands and painted rivers red with blood. Each year the northern border is harder to defend. Each year the toll of death is greater. But to the Kislevites, this is a price they are willing to pay. The north is their homeland, and if they cannot live there, they will die there.
Steady your hearts, brothers and sisters of Kislev. The motherland protects. Embrace her, and we will see victory!
With the leadership of their Ice Queen, Cathay, the armies of Kislev stand proud and firm, ready to defend their homeland with blood and steel once again. The Queen has mustered all her forces and marches to war in the front lines. The vast power she holds comes from the motherland itself, and she walks mighty as a reincarnation of the first Khan Queen Mishka. But the menace that comes from beyond this time is different. Like a black sea that devours it all, the fire that burns in the hearts of the Kislevites are only dim lights against the encroaching darkness of chaos. Standing as the beacon of humanity, the light fades against what is to come. Before the men of the Empire, before the riders of Bretonnia, and the proud dwarves of the mountains, the Kislevites face first the terrible legions of the dark gods and their demonic creatures that now roam the lands. Being the masters of both the cold of winter and the art of warfare, the stubborn Kislevite will clash in the middle of the storm, and by their motherland they will emerge victorious, or they will die in the snow. The very mountains themselves shake to their core, for even the world itself knows that the end is nigh. The wild and feral creatures that roam the high peaks, and the ones that hide in the darkness of the deepest of caves alike, they are all sensing the shift in the winds, and are becoming more wrathful. Increased volcanic activity can be felt all across the entire mountain range. It is very well known that the mountains of Morn are rife with volcanoes and occasional eruptions, but it seems now that the world is shaking from within. Smoke rises incessantly across the mountains, and the clouds above the lands of the ogres are now dark. Dark whispers and unsettling echoes can be heard over the valleys, and as the creatures increase their attacks to satiate their bloodlust, the ogres are drawn to defend their homeland from the rising tide of chaos. A few tribes have now pledged their allegiance to the dark gods. With promises of food, plunder, and riches, they have abandoned their homes and travelled north, disappearing into the growing storms. The majority of the Ogre Kingdoms, however, would fight against chaos and any other force that would threaten their existence. Greasus Goldtooth, the over-tyrant of the Ogre Kingdoms, knows that the time of feasting has ended, that the time for war is now. As the caves collapse and ancient rock formations crumble, as the earth shakes and the volcanoes spit their fire and rage to the sky, the ogres mobilize for war. A great migration has begun for the ogres, and the consequences will be felt by all civilizations of the world.
A bruise this git here. Now, we're gonna swallow him whole, chew on his eyeballs, and throw his nags into the fire now. Right, let's get to it!
To the far east of the world, beyond the Dark Lands, across the mountains of Morn, in the vast territories of Grand Cathay, there is a concerning imbalance in the air that can be felt by immortals and all-powerful dragons alike. Throughout history, the lands of Grand Cathay have been attacked on innumerable occasions, damaged, and even sometimes breached. But still, the Great Bastion stands as a powerful vanguard against the forces of the Dark Gods, as it is constantly maintained and garrisoned by massive armies. But now, even that seems to not be enough to stop the coming storm of death and fire that approaches.
We have suffered enough.
The harmony of the Cathayan way of life is ever present, their forces acting in concert with deadly efficiency to lay waste to the armies of chaos that constantly assail them. But the calm that characterizes Grand Cathay is facing the greatest of threats, as chaos is ascending like never before, and the creatures from the warp now walk the world, threatening to devour it all. As the drums of war sound across the land, chaos influence grows from within, and the dark armies amass before the Great Bastion. Grand Cathay is bound to face its biggest challenge yet. The defense of the realm, the future of Grand Cathay and the world lies in their hands. The burden is heavy, and the dark portents that choke the land are undeniable. The world is now submerged in a storm of dark magic that flows freely into the mortal planes. The factions that inhabit the world must unite and fight against the encroaching enemy, or else they will be reaped from the earth. Will the might of humanity be able to resist one more time against the forces of chaos? Or will the dark gods and their terrible armies of rage and madness finally succeed in despoiling everything that exists? Immortal Empires is a campaign like no other. The world itself is the massive battlefield on which this cataclysmic war will be fought, as each race contends to reach immortal glory. With so many powerful races and unique factions, each with their own weaponry, legendary lords, mastery of the arcane arts, ways of doing diplomacy, and each pursuing different objectives, who will remain when the burning war for the world is finally over? Who will stand alone as the victor of the Immortal Empires Campaign? That is for you to decide.
On this channel, we are putting together narrative Total War cinematic battles and Warhammer lore videos. A special thank you goes to our Patreon supporters who help us in the making of more content. You can also join Patreon and earn extra perks while supporting the videos to come. Find the link in the description below. Make sure to subscribe, and thank you for watching. See you on the next one.